If drawing a map is the first thing you do when you start building your D&D world, I think you are hurting the game. I've been DMing since I was a kid, and I used to do this too, before I realized there actually was a much better way. So today I'm gonna show you what it is by giving you 10 rules, 10 commandments that will make your world building actually matter at the table. And to prove they work, I'm gonna build a region from scratch using nothing but these 10 principles, and by the end of this video, you will have watched a fully playable setting come to life, know exactly why every piece of it works, and you will be able to do the same thing to make your own games unforgettable. And to start, I'm gonna ask you to think about any fictional world you love, like Middle-earth or Westeros, and ask yourself, what do you actually remember about them? Is it coastlines or cities? I don't think so. You remember the arguments, like Sauron versus the people of Middle-earth, or Starks versus Lannisters, for example. Every great fantasy world is built on a fight. Matt Colville explains this really well when he says that the world starts to make sense when you see it as factions struggling for power. All the rest, the culture, history, etc., emerges from a central tension. So our first commandment is build tension before terrain. If you want to play in your world, your very first world building decision should be, what is this world arguing about? And the way you do it is you come up with a single sentence following this format. Something is at stake, and the people who depend on it can't agree on what to do about it. This is gonna be the seed your entire world grows from. So let's put it in practice. For the example we'll build in this video, we will start with this sentence. A magical resource that an entire community depends on is failing, and nobody agrees on what to do about it. That's our fight. So, what's the resource? Let's say it's a river. We'll call it Ashwater River, and I think it carries traces of magic from an ancient source deep up north. And I think the consequence of magic flowing through a river is we have settlements that depend on it for agriculture, medicine, and trade. But because we decided that the source is weakening, the water is losing its power, so people start panicking. And from there, the factions almost build themselves. I think we have people up north near the source with political power, and they control the access to the refined version of the water that's still powerful enough, and they're getting authoritarian and ration access. I will call them the Ash Keepers. And rationing means people downstream are getting cut off. Since it's a river, I think that would be a fishing and farming community, and they started looking for alternatives. And we'll call them the Tide Reachers. And because there's a conflict, and we all went to history class, we know some people will try to benefit from it by stockpiling this water for profit. That's gonna be an alchemist guild, the Water Rights. Okay, so now we have tension and 3 factions, but it still feels a bit generic. It could be any river in any fantasy world. So what actually makes a setting feel like nowhere else? Well, to do that, we have to take things away. Let me explain. When people start building worlds, it often ends up feeling like a shopping catalog of species, kingdoms, magic systems, etc. that somehow still feels generic. And I think that is because when we go into building mode, we build by adding. But great settings are memorable because of what isn't in there. Brendan Sanderson, one of today's most respected fantasy authors, has this principle he talks about. Limitations are more interesting than powers. He's known for being the magic system guy, but this applies way beyond that to everything in your world, really. And that's our second commandment. Define your world by what it lacks. What is scarce, forbidden, or broken, or gone? Let's go back to the Ashwater Reach. Our resource is scarce, but what does it affect? Well, what if the healing in this region has always come from this river? Maybe the gods in this region are old, quiet nature spirits, and to heal, clerics absolutely need refined ash water. And the Water Rights, or Alchemy Guild faction, they're the only ones who know how to refine it. So now an item as basic as a healing potion almost becomes a political object. This means the clergy and the economy are interconnected on a very deep level. With that simple choice, we gave new rules to magic. But if we stop there, our world is still kind of basic. So we need to ask ourselves, how does that impact everything else? I want you to think about what the rules of D&D actually give us. We have magical healing, teleportation, instant communication, even detect thoughts, But somehow, most of the time, we still have very basic medieval feudalism, horse travel, sealed letters, etc. My point is, in many settings, the magic and the society are living in two very different worlds, and it impacts the immersion at the table. I think this is one of the things the Edariad setting does very well. Its creator, Keith Baker, asked himself, what does society look like in a world where magic has been around for thousands of years? And the answer made him create something that feels unique. So this is our third commandment. Let your magic break your world. You should decide not only what magic can do right now, but what it did to the economy, politics, daily life, wars, etc. In the Ashwater Reach, because we have magic water, we have crops that grow faster, don't get diseases, and yeah, I think they taste incredible. So that means the Reach used to export tons of great food when the river was going strong, and because of that, it's a wealthy place, which attracts attention. But because the entire economy depends on this magical river, the resulting society has a single point of failure. So our Guild of Alchemists stepped up when the river started to lose its magic. They invented the refining process and actually became a sort of pharmaceutical monopoly. The people up north, the Ashkeepers, are the region's government, but now that the resource is not a fully natural resource anymore and the alchemists are gaining power, they put out more laws and get stricter because they don't want to lose their spot at the top. And the tide reachers, the people who actually grow the crops, etc., they have now been facing an economic crisis for a decade, and many of them became rebels because they're hungry. You start with just what does magical water do to a farming economy, and you get an entire political map that automatically appears. Alright, so we're 3 commandments in, and the Ashwater Reach is starting to take shape. We've got tension, scarcity, and magic that has a deep impact on the world. But how do we make sure that when players start exploring, they don't accidentally run through a cardboard wall? This is where the 4th commandment is extremely useful. But before we go there, I need to tell you about the tool I've been showing you a bit throughout this video. It's called Amsel Suite, and it's the sponsor of today's video. It's composed of 2 apps, Lore and Tome, that are designed to work together. Lore is where you build your world, like the factions, locations, and cultures, all of the stuff we've been doing so far. It gives you templates to organize everything, and they're fully customizable, so you're not forced to use someone else's idea of what your nodes should look like. And Tome is where you run your game. You write your sessions, your scenes, etc. And everything links back to lore. So, in the middle of a session, if a player asks you about a faction you haven't thought about in 3 months, it's just one click away. The thing I really like about it is it's built for how DMs actually work. And by that, I mean not linearly. It assumes your players are going to go off script, and it's designed around that. It works offline, it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it's a one-time purchase. You buy it, and it's yours. The company is French, and the software available in both English and French, which I really like as well. If you want to check it out, there's a link in the description, and you can use the code Edariad10 for a 10% discount. The code's valid for 3 months, so no rush, but it won't last forever. Alright, so back to it. How do we make sure players don't accidentally run through a cardboard wall then? Well, you might have heard about the iceberg theory. I think it's Hemingway's idea. You only show 10% of your world, but build the other 90% so it feels deep. And Hemingway's, Hemingway, so he must be onto something, right? But we're not trying to write the great American novel here, so unless you're Hemingway or Tolkien and have a few decades ahead of you, we need a more practical approach. Again, I think we can use the Sanderson playbook here. In his university lectures, he suggests you try to get a few small details so right that the audience, or in our case the players, assume you got everything else right too. Recreate hyper-specific visible cultural details that will create the illusion of complexity. And that's our 4th commandment. Fake the iceberg. Instead of building the 90% you'll never show, you make the 10% you do show so specific and flavorful that the players will just assume the rest exists. And here's how we're going to do it. For every faction, location, culture, etc., we're going to create 3 specific details. The sensory one, what does this place smell, sound, or look like? A behavioral one, like a custom, a way of greeting or eating, etc. And one object, a can be a tool, clothing, a coin, it doesn't matter. Just something that's easy for players to imagine. For our factions, it could be this. For the Ashkeepers, sensory. They carry a subtle smell of whetstone because they live near the river source in cave networks. Behavioral, they use a ton of water metaphors. Like maybe calling someone still water is some kind of S-tier insult, essentially calling them useless. An object, they wear riverstone pendants that can detect how much magic is left in the water. And the custom is to dip it into your cup before drinking. For the water rights, we have sensory. We have workshops that smell like copper and bird's sugar used in the refinement process. Behavioral, they take all kinds of precautions when handling the water because spilling it is kind of taboo. An object, their signature product, comes in blue glass vials shaped like teardrops, and they're so precious that empty ones are worth 10 gold pieces and can be used in all stores in the region, etc., etc. Even with zero history or timeline so far, if I start describing an Ashwater NPC dipping their stone pendant into drink and frowning, the players will already feel like this world and its inhabitants have been alive for a long time. But we have a problem now, because everything we've built so far is kind of lore related. It's interesting and has texture, sure, but can the players actually do stuff with it? Because we're not writing a book, and we do want to play in this world at some point. So here's how you make sure. You take any piece of lore you've built and ask, how can my players interact with this? And the answer is, well, they can listen to an NPC explain it. It's not that useful. To make any piece of lore playable, you have to attach a need to it. Somebody might need something from it, or be threatened or hide from it. And that's our 5th commandment. Make your lore actionable. So let's make sure what we built so far is good. The factions are all actionable because players can ally with them or betray them. Maybe you try to smooth out political tensions, etc. But I think right now River Source itself is kind of just background lore. So let's fix it. What if the source isn't actually natural? Maybe there is something alive, buried very deep, that's been bleeding magic into the water for so long that everyone forgot it was there in the first place. And maybe it's not actually dying, but waking up, and the magic stops dripping from it because it's being used to do just that. And now the source becomes kind of a ticking clock. Players can investigate or maybe even go in a dungeon to explore. You can use it as part of a moral choice. Do you try to put the creature back to sleep to keep the magic flowing? Or maybe free because it's probably sentient? Now we have a world players can touch. They can choose between factions and have a mystery to investigate. But what happens in this world when the players aren't looking? When players get bored, it's often because the world is waiting for them. It's the last time we were here was 3 years ago and nothing has changed effect. And because that's very different from the real world and we're playing a game where adventures happen, it kills immersion. But the fix is very simple. We can use a clock mechanic, kind of like what you can find in games like Blades in the Dark, for example. You give each faction a goal and a progress track, and each session you advance one of them based on what makes sense. The player's actions might speed things up or slow them down, but they can't pause the world, which will carry on spinning. This is our 6th commandment. Let your world move without them. Start thinking of the world as a system running on its own internal logic. In the Ashwater Reach, I think we have 3 clocks, all with 10 steps. For the Ashkeepers, it's a lockdown gauge. When it fills, they will ban all private Ashwater trade. For the water rights, I will call it the vault. When it reaches the maximum, they will have a huge private reserve, stop supplying and obeying the Ashkeepers, and essentially try to seize political control. For the Tide Reachers, it's the Salt Right. They send some of their bravest heroes on a quest to experiment with sea-based magic, and when this fills, it works. They won't need the river anymore. So now, if the players decide to escort a water rights shipment, while they're gone, the Ashkeepers advance their clock, and when players come back, there are new checkpoints on the river, for example. The world moved, and they have to react. But I would like to draw your attention to something. We've been building this region for a while now, and I still haven't told you what's north of the river. And it's not because I forgot. So why? There's an essay by an author called Lincoln Michel called Against Worldbuilding that kind of changed how I think about all this stuff. His argument is that there are two approaches you can take when building a world. One is you basically try to construct a scale model of the world where every question has a logical answer, and according to him, that's what traditional world building is. And the other one is something he suggests we call world conjuring, an approach where we strategically use hints and fragments, so imagination does a lot of the heavy lifting. You leave things out, so readers, or in our case players, turn into archaeologists and assemble meaning from these fragments. And that's our 7th commandment. Leave a room for the unknown. You leave parts of your world undefined on purpose and treat mystery as a resource. In the Ashwater Reach, what is the source creature exactly? I don't know. I have a vibe? I think it's something ancient and big. Is it even conscious? Maybe, but I'm not going to write a stat block because I just know that the moment my players start investigating, their theories are going to be a lot better than anything I could have planned. Same with geography. What's north of the river, beyond the Ashkeeper's territory? I don't know. Maybe even the Ashkeepers don't go that far. And the new sea magic we mentioned? I know it will work when the gauge fills up and scare the other factions, but I haven't decided how it works yet. I'll figure that out when the characters are about to witness it for the first time. That way we keep wonder alive. Okay, but if we have to build stuff, but also keep things mysterious, how do we decide what to keep and what to leave out? Well, I believe every detail you put in your world is making a promise, and that like any good promise, breaking it is worse than not making it. Okay, let me explain. Say we have a DM describing this massive dungeon door covered in runes and sealed with chains with a subtle blue glow. The party tries everything to open it. Nothing works. The DM just says, "You just can't seem to open it," and they move on. 3 sessions later, the players ask, about the door, and the DM says, "Oh, that was just flavor. Nothing to see there, really." But if a glowing sealed door means nothing, why would any other detail mean anything? And it works the other way too. When the players start caring about a throwaway NPC or a random shop, they're kind of handing you a check. And you should definitely cash it and make that detail seriously important. Because 1, they will think you're actually a genius, which is always nice. And 2, they will start paying a lot more attention to everything you show them. I think an easy rule you can follow is, if you mention something once, that's cool, it's atmosphere. Twice it becomes a pattern and should be playable. And 3 times means you just made a promise. So our 8th commandment is honor your promises. Every meaningful detail you put into your world is a contract with your players. We've covered quite a few things so far, and if you're listening to all this and thinking, "Oh my god, that sounds like so much prep," I have good news for you, because even if it's a commandment, the next one is going to sound like heresy. A lot of DMs spend weeks or months prepping before session 1, and then, because life gets in the way, sometimes the campaign does not even start. It's often a case of what people call Worldbuilder's disease. The prep becomes the hobby, and the game never happens. I suggest you use a simple pre-session checklist with a central tension 1 sentence, 2 to 4 factions with incompatible goals, 1 limitation that makes this world different, 3 sensory details for the starting area, and 1 mystery you don't know the answer to yet. I give you a beautiful, editable, slightly more detailed version of this in the description, by the way. If your goal is to play in the world, that's all you need. And for everything else, you follow the 9th commandment, which is build through play. Your world doesn't need to be finished before you start playing, but just start it, Then you play and let the game build the rest. Cool, so our region is already starting to breathe, and we already have 9 commandments, but I saved the most important one for last. It sits above all the others, and you might not like it. I need to tell you something hard. I'm saying this as someone who loves world building, probably even a little bit too much. Your players don't really care about your world. I know, how dare they? You spend time on it, and you care about that dynasty and the trade routes, etc. But your players care about whether the bartender likes them and about their backstories. Because to them, the world is not a world, but the environment around their character. It's a massive point of view difference, and taking it into consideration is kind of the whole point of building a D&D world. So the 10th commandment is your world should exist to challenge characters and not to display your craft. And so here's the final filter I suggest you run everything through. You ask yourself, can this piece of world building make a player character uncomfortable? I'm not talking about the player. Please keep your tables safe. The character. For example, can it force them to betray an ally or sacrifice something they love? Does it create some sort of emotional attachment that could cause problems down the line? If yes, great, your world is doing its job. If no, there's a risk. It might not really matter at the table. So let's see why this matters by putting a character in the region we've been building so far. And say it's an Oath of Protection Paladin because I love paladins. The Tide Reachers are starving and the Ashkeepers are hoarding. So as someone who swore to protect the weak, the right thing to do seems obvious. They should help the Tide Reachers in their rebellion against the Ashkeepers, right? But then, if the paladin learns about the source creature that's been there for centuries, that it might not have been producing the magic willingly, but basically being bled for power for as long as anyone can remember, so that the settlements along the river could prosper, now they have a real choice to make. Should they help the creature, find a way to put it back to sleep, etc.? There's no easy answer, and the world was at the origin of that choice. Everything we built worked together to put that character in front of it. The important bit is we didn't start with this dilemma. We didn't think, okay, so how do we torment paladins? Instead, we focused on building a world with tension, scarcity, and consequences, and it emerged on its own. And I think this is how you know what you're doing is working. You get drama that constructs itself. So I want to zoom out for a bit. We started with nothing but a question. What is this world arguing about? And we ended up with factions at war, a failing river of magic, a creature older than anyone remembers, 4 countdown clocks, and a hard moral dilemma. Without a map. This is not an anti-map video, by the way. Maps are cool. Draw maps. They're fun. I just wanted to show you that starting at a different place can lead to cool results. I don't think you should think about these commandments as restrictions either. They're more like a way to sharpen your instincts. You take the excitement you already have, the stuff that makes you want to build worlds in the first place, and you aim it at the things that actually matter, aka the people sitting at your table and their characters. Your world doesn't need to be complete, just alive. But we have a problem now. What happens if you build all this and your players only ever see half of it? Was all that extra effort in vain? Well, I don't think so, because the world building you do for yourself that never makes it to the table actually makes you a better DM, even if you never show it to anyone. So click on this video next to find out how.